next up we have Rachael Hodson. And as Rachel's coming up here, we want to thank her and her family for making this all happen. This is her house. Her husband, Matt, is here in the back, trying to make sure we don't notice him. But thanks, Matt. Their son, Isaac, and their other son, Noah, who's off hiking right now. We wish him Godspeed and a safe return home. Come on up, Rach. Thanks again, guys, for making this all happen. It wouldn't have happened without you.
I don't know how you guys kept it together. I look out here too and I see what Lani's done for all of us, because so many of you have impacted my life and in really positive ways, and it takes a village to raise a village. And Ron with his summer camps and spending time with my cousins, and Lani, who's not here today, but really made me, they were a part of my life growing up. I have to clear one thing up. She almost failed with the Chop Chef thing. No, me and Mariah had to go head to head. She thought it was a really good idea to bond. It was a terrible idea because I lost, even though it was way better. We're all here. I remember when I was painting my house and I was up on a ladder and Lani called me. She said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm painting my house." And she's like, "You're always painting your house." And she said, I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Well, I think you should go off the ladder." But she said, "I have some really bad news." And that bad news is why we're all here today. But I want you to know, I would never take back the last year and a half. I got to spend some really, really precious memories with her. And she, like my family, loved to read and play games. Nobody in my own family loves to read and play games. And I spent every time that she went to the hospital at the Cancer Institute with her. She didn't want Katie there to see her. And that was really difficult, but you just pretend that it's all fun and games, and it was games, and everybody's in there and it's quiet and they have the lights down, and she never ever beat me at any game ever. And she beat me at my game Quiddler. And in the middle of that room she went, "Wow!" And all the doctors came running, and she pulled her thing out of her arm, and there's nurses all over. She's like, "I beat her. I never beat her." So, anyways, I love that she did have a good sense of humor, but she was my mom here in Utah and did the same things for me that my own mom in Washington would do. But like everybody said, she was really intelligent. But one of the things that her and I just really, that we shared, she was my best Goodreads best friend. And we spent a lot of time talking about books. And we agreed on books and we disagreed on books. And I remember walking in the door one day and she's like, "Are you ready for your sticker?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "I read the Mueller report. Are you going to read it?" And I'm like, no. I'm not getting a sticker this today. But so we have all these books up here, and I'm so grateful that you guys brought them, because this is really important to her, and she did love to learn, and she liked to read, like Katie said, everything. So Mariah actually made these bookmarks that we're going to, she had them made.
I didn't make them.
That afterwards, when you come pick a book, you can take a bookmark, and I'll tell you what's on here in a minute. Otherwise, it won't make sense. But I brought a couple of books. I think that was really important. Like everybody has said, she was really into what was going on in the world and current events and standing up for what was right. And she loved this book right here about the Nickel Boys. It was a Pulitzer Prize winner, and it's a beautiful story. A book that we disagreed on, I brought. I love William Kent Kruger, and I love this book, Ordinary Grace, and I told her it should have been required reading in all schools, and she didn't agree with me. But I want to read a quote from this book, and we talked about this a lot. It was a man in the book who was homeless, and in the end he passed away, and they had found his body. But it's a small town story, and the preacher got up at the end and he said, "We believe too often that on the roads we walk alone, which is never true. Even this man who is unknown to us was known to God, and God was his constant companion. God never promised us an easy life. He never promised that we wouldn't suffer, that we wouldn't feel despair and loneliness and confusion and desperation. What he did promise was that in our suffering we would never be alone. And though we may sometimes make ourselves blind and deaf to his presence, he is beside us and around us and within us always. We're never separated from his love." And that was a sermon given in this book. And we talked a lot about that. But I think we both kind of agreed to disagree, but it was really special to me. She loved a book called Migrations, and she said it was the best book of 2020. And she brought it to me, and I read it, and I gave it a scathing review on Goodreads. And so her response to me about that book is actually on this, and I'm going to get to it. But the author of Migration, Charlotte McConaughey, wrote another book, and it just came out. It's called Once There Were Wolves. And so this is my last goodbye to Lani, if I can get onto it. First off, I'd like to say that my sweet Aunt Lani gave me a copy of Migrations after it was released. Sorry. I'm so nervous I'm twitching the phone. Sorry, I'm so sorry, you guys. Okay. She loved it so much, and she thought I would as well. I was swept up in Migrations, but it had its faults. You can read my review on Goodreads if you want to be my friend. And there was a moment at the end where I actually wanted to toss the book against a wall, but I understood the accolades from so many. Lani felt Migrations. I said you, and I got into your soul. My aunt is sadly no longer with us. She was a stellar human being who actively defended what she felt was right. She had a tender and empathetic heart, and she carried the weight of the world upon her shoulders. In fact, the world and the current state of events weighed so heavily on her at times that sadness and despair consumed her, and she fell into dark places. She oftentimes read books which not only validated her feelings, but helped her to cope with the burdens and the incurable sicknesses of life, which ultimately consumed her body until she was finally free. Lani was many things, but she was also my favorite Goodreads friend. I completely understand why she loved Migrations as much as she did. The book made her feel, it made her think, and it made her weep for what the earth had lost. This is a quote from the end of Once There Were Wolves. I call your name with a voice broken by grief, but I have done this before and I know its end. You have gone the way that Dad did, like the animals do. You have gone into the wild to die, or maybe you have gone to live. We were two book lovers who loved each other and loved to talk about the stories that we read. I know that Once There Were Wolves would have been at the top of her to-read list if she had had the chance. I know she would have felt the beautiful sentences that Charlotte put to paper. The deep sadness as well as hope that exists within this book would have stirred her soul. She would have wanted to fight. She would have wanted to save the women and save the wolves and defend the conservationists who tirelessly do what they feel is right. We likely would have disagreed that all the sides must come together to further a cause because she's so plainly black and white. There is a lot of gray in this book, and for that, I may have liked it just that much more than she would have, and maybe she would have thrown it against the wall. Once There Were Wolves is for you, Lani. This is my last goodbye to you on Goodreads. Every time I get on a book on there, she's commented on one of my books, or I've commented on hers, and it's really hard to not be able to share that. You were right when you said that Charlotte could weave words to cast you under her spell. She knows how to write a story so that the reader falls into her world and makes you feel. I know she touched your heart and made you think. So rarely do I read books that just don't stack up to good entertainment, but that actually pierce your soul and make you want to do something. Rarely do I close a book and force back tears from falling. Rarely do I actually admit that there are things that I do not know of, experiences that thankfully I have never endured, and efforts which I do not understand but which I will choose to know more of. This book is not without fault and error, and oddly, if you read some of the 1-star reviews, I do not disagree with some of the criticisms. And just like my aunt said, to my scathing review of Migrations, which is on this bookmark, and I just thought it was so beautiful, she said, I hear and understand your criticism. However, for me, all else is forgiven based on the beauty of McConaughey's writing. Also, I appreciated her minimalistic approach to background and character development. Just as Picasso is able to depict the essence of a person or animal with just a few strokes, McConaughey told me all I needed to know about the physical world. And her thoughts echoed my feelings of once there were wolves and all creatures know love. So I'm going to pop these books up here. Also, I brought the best book I've read this year. And I just want to thank you guys all for coming, and for Josh and Scott and for Sid and all of her work. And I just hope that you all know that how much I love you, and I don't wish that we were here, but I'm glad that we got to be together this day.